Republican Rick Saccone and Democrat Connor Lamb making their final push before tomorrow's special election in Pennsylvania. Many see the race as the unofficial kickoff for midterms. Will the economy be the wind at Republicans' back? Let's ask Wall Street Journal Associate Editor John Bussey, conservative commentator Kathy Burnette, and RealClearPolitics national political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns. Kathy, to me it seems like, to be quite frank with you, both candidates are running as Republicans. But having said that, what will be the deciding factor here?
In paper only, maybe both candidates are kind of running like a Republican. But I think the economy, right? I mean, every American, including Democrats, should be really excited about what's going on in our economy. Last month, we added over 300,000 jobs overall, a portion of that, 61,000 being construction. And if you drill down a little bit, the majority of those construction jobs were subcontracting jobs. So we're talking about electricians, we're talking about plumbers. These are blue-collar jobs in a blue-collar area. That's going to make a difference in addition to manufacturing jobs. The jobs Obama said wasn't coming, they came. So within 2 months, we've already added over 500,000 jobs. Now, I know to people like Nancy Pelosi and others, they may be considered crumbs, but to the rest of America, that equates to bread on the table, roof over our head, and for many Americans, hope, as we see that participation rate also increasing.
You know, those construction jobs, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, play an average of $27 an hour. To your point, very high-paying jobs, and it's just not that part of the blue-collar argument, but all of a sudden the tariff debate plays pretty well, I think, in this area of Pennsylvania.
Right, and that's been part of the president's thinking on this, thinking about the politics. This district, though, is very interesting. We're talking about, we've been talking about it as a strictly blue-collar district, but it also includes some of the suburbs of Pittsburgh that are those college-educated traditional Republicans. So that's important to consider here, too. Both sides are looking at this race to see what they can glean from it for the midterms. And Republicans are already talking about the way in which Saccone is a bad candidate. But the fact that this is a competitive race in a place where Trump won by 20 points, I think will tell us something about the environment and also the amount of money that both sides, but particularly Republicans, are spending on this race tells you why they want to kind of gain control of the narrative.
Yeah, finally, John, it looks like Republicans, they've won 5 special elections in a row. There have been some bumps in the road, of course. Some are pointing to that Atlanta race, saying it's not dissimilar in the sense that you had a suburban area of highly educated folks that were going to be the deciding factor. In that case, they did go for the Republican candidate.
Right. So we'll see how much the economy plays into this in District 18 and how much the issues around Donald Trump play into it. For the very reasons you said, the suburban voter seems to be energized again, getting back into action. But getting back to your initial question, this, no question, is a tailwind for the Republicans. This is not just an expanding economy in the United States. It's happening globally, and as a result, companies in the United States are adding workers to feed exports to countries around the world. Not only did we have 300,000 new jobs last month, we had 800,000 people rejoin the labor pool. So those are the numbers to watch. This has been going on for 9 years. We've had 9 years of economic expansion, really good jobs numbers now for several years. All of that plays well for a Republican candidate in the field.
And yet, Kathy, it's still relatively close in the polls. Many people are calling it a toss-up. What would you attribute that to?
Polls and progressives. I would have thought in 2016 we would have gotten enough of the polls, but that's generally how they have been winning, whether with polls or whether winning with some kind of scandal that they can conjure up. But at the end of the day, there will be some Democrats, obviously, who will go out and vote strictly Democrat, but they're being fueled by just pure hate of this president, not because the Democratic Party is offering them anything of substance beyond racism, Russia, and pandering to illegals in order to get their votes. What really is the Democratic Party running for?
You know, as much as, I think that the way it's been framed, to your point, the way it's been set up for President Trump is that the headlines on Wednesday will say that he lost, even if Saccone wins, because there's going to be a thin margin. Again, I think both men are running on GOP Republican platforms. Lamb has distanced himself from Pelosi. Yeah. But, Caitlin, what about the notion that we could see a sea change, that this may actually start to cement that these formerly blue states where you had the Rust Belt blue-collar worker may become red states. I mean, that's another part of this narrative no one's talking about.
Yeah, I mean, after 2016, the maps have been changing. And I think it is important to draw a distinction between the House map this year and the Senate map. They're kind of very different geographic and demographic. But, you know, Democrats have been seeing growth potential in places like Texas, even though it's a long shot, Arizona, Nevada certainly, and then places like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, we saw in 2016 turned over to the Republican side. What I'm watching for in this particular race to see what we can get out of it for the midterms is the level of enthusiasm among Democrats, but also whether those voters who supported Trump cross over and support Lamb. As you mentioned, Lamb is running as a conservative Democrat. He embraced those tariffs that the president proposed. He's been pro-gun and those sorts of things, trying to walk that line. But what's also interesting is that Republicans want to run on the economy, no question. But you're seeing in some of these races leaning into the cultural issues on both sides, but Republicans as well. You saw that in the Trump rally. So as much as he wants to talk about the economy, he's also trying to play up those cultural issues that get his base turned out.
Although Lamb, you know, John, he's been pretty adamant that, hey, I am not a Pelosi Democrat.
Yeah, as you said, it sometimes seems like two Republicans are running. He's pretty much a conservative Democrat on a lot of issues. But back to the sea change question that you asked, there are a couple of there's an economic sea change, there's a political sea change that could affect not just this election but going into 2018. What happens with this trade discussion? Yeah, tariffs kind of play well to a certain part of Pennsylvania, but let's say that this gets going and we end up with a tit-for-tat trade war with our allies abroad and with other trading partners like China. That could have a cooling effect on the economy. That could be a bad narrative going into the 2018 elections. Hard to slow this economy down right now, but it could be kind of a mitigating factor.
The irony of that statement, though, is that the only reason we didn't have 3% growth in the fourth quarter last year was trade. All four elements of GDP growth, the other three were phenomenal, particularly domestic consumption and things like that. The only thing that's killing us is this trade deficit, which gets larger and larger and larger. I will tell you right now, I polled folks on my own on Twitter and social media, and people are saying they understand economics more than I think the experts give them credit for. And they say that they're willing to pay more initially if we can bring back those manufacturing plants, if we can turn on the steel plants. They say they understand the idea that, hey, we may take a short-term hit, but we want long-term economic independence.
So companies are going to be making their decisions, their economic decisions, based on their own needs. If they see something brewing that might affect their sales abroad or their relationships with trading partners abroad, they may curtail investment here. These are kind of midterm decisions on the basis of on companies' part. It's a confidence level. Will companies continue to invest if they see the trade picture darkening?